Hello everyone and welcome to this video, and today I'm going to be doing a David Bowie album ranking. So this video was requested by a friend of mine and fellow Bowie lover, Susan, so yeah, like we shout out to you. Today I'm going to be ranking some of his albums. Now I won't be doing like his whole discography because it is very large, and like there are some albums off his which I'm really not familiar with, so I'm just going to be concentrating today like on like the period between 1969 and 1989, so 20 years of music there. I do also own like later albums like The Next Day and Black Star, but I just thought like for this video that I would like just look at like this like sort of like classic period like for Bowie. So yeah, in total we've got 17 albums here which I'm going to rank in order of my personal preference. So yeah, we'll just get started with number 17. And at number 17 is going to go to Tonight, his album from 1984. And yeah, for me this is one of like the only records like which he made which like I'm just not a massive fan of really. Like for me it just lacks like any real bite. It doesn't have like the pop classics like which are on like Let's Dance, like even though he's sort of like he's trying to repeat the formula like off that album like in some ways. Also lacks some of the energy like which like the follow-up album like Never Let Me Down like has like a little bit like more bite to it. Like this one here, like it just falls flat really. Aside from the single Blue Jean, which is pretty good, the rest like off like the tracks are pretty forgettable. Plus his cover of like God Only Knows is pretty god awful, yeah. So not a brilliant album this one here, Tonight, and that comes in at last place. And then not much better than that is the follow-up album, which although I said like has a bit more bite to it, like I mean like it's still not a great album. It's Never Let Me Down here. Most people consider this his worst album, and like I must say, like, I don't really blame them. But there are a couple of tracks which I do quite like on here. I like Time Will Crawl and also the song Zeros. But for me, the only way that I can now listen to this album is like the remix what was done like a few years back. It just sort of like it just sort of takes off a lot of like the overproduction nonsense, and like really there are a couple of really really top class songs like so like lurking like underneath like the production, like, but yeah, like it is just a bit of like a mess like as it is like in terms like of like the sound and that. And then we're staying with the 80s now, and like the last album which I'm including like on like this list, like so like chronologically speaking, it is the Tin Machine album. And yeah, this again often gets a really bad rap, and I did play it probably for like the first time again like a good wee while, and it's not as bad like as people make it out to be. Like I don't think like there's some good moments on it, like I have to say. Like I mean like it's got a lot of energy on it, like it's a bit more like it is certainly like a change of direction compared like to like the last few like very pop driven albums. This is a real sort of like hard rock sort of feeling to it. Plus I do actually quite like his version of a Working Class Hero, like which is like which is quite notable, like the old like John Lennon track. And yeah, there are some good stuff on here, so certainly not as bad as people make it out, but certainly not like a top 10 Bowie album for me like by any means.
This is Major Tom to ground control.
And then we turn the clock back 20 years back to 1969 for the next one, number 14, which is his official second album. It's the Space Oddity album, but also I believe it was initially released self-titled, like then it got reissued like in the mid-70s, like as Space Oddity, like it's had a crazy like release history. But yeah, for me it is a slightly odd album. This is it's got a kind of folky flavour to it, but also quite psychedelic as well. But for me, aside from the title track, there's nothing much on here which is really notable, like not much I really go back to. But I mean, like the title song, like it's an absolute gem, and like that does raise it up like a little bit. So yeah, number 14 goes to Space Oddity. Number 13 now is his covers collection, which he released back in 1973. It's Pin-Ups. And yeah, overall, a really enjoyable collection like of covers here. A lot of songs like from like the 60s, like which sort of like influenced him. So you've got like classics like by Pink Floyd on here, See Emily Play. Got a Who song like I Can't Explain, Friday on My Mind, I think originally by the Easy Beats maybe, and then his version of Sorrow, like which is a single, and again a great version of that. And then what other ones? You've got a Kink song like Where Have All the Good Times Gone. So yeah, overall a really good collection. I mean, it's not a like top tier Bowie album, but it was an enjoyable like release like from like a real golden time like in like his his career. So yeah, Pin-Ups comes in at number 13. Next up now, number 12. Maybe some people might say I have this one a little bit low because it is one of his most popular albums, but for me, this is where I think it should go. It is Let's Dance, which I've got at number 12. This was his most commercial album, his best-selling album, I believe, as well. But for me personally, aside from the 3 massive singles, Modern Love, China Girl, and Let's Dance, like all of which like open like the album, like they're like the first like 3 songs. Once you get past those, there's not much material like of any substance like on here. Like unfortunately, like there's not much like I like go back to. But those 3 singles are absolutely brilliant, and like definitely are like what raised this album like up a notch like for me. So yeah, number 12 would go to Let's Dance. Okay, now number 11, it does pay me to put this one so low, but I mean, considering like the amount of classic albums Bowie made, like there has to be like a place for everything. And number 11, I'm giving it to a Young Americans here. Now, I mean, I absolutely love this era like of Bowie. I love his style. Like I think like so like his like whole like aesthetic look like around this time like probably was like one of like my favorite like looks like for him. But like and like also this was a very important album for him to make as well. Like it's a very much like a sort of like he firmly moved away like from like the glam rock style and like was really embracing soul music on this album, and it is a really pleasing listen. Like it's a really easy listening album. It's just for me a little bit samey throughout. Like there's not enough variation between the tracks. Like it's got a very sort of like a set sound and vibe. This album without like deviating too much from that. But I do love a lot of the tracks on here, like the title track Young Americans, Right. I also really love his version of Across the Universe. A lot of people really hate it, but I think I'm going to be controversial, say it's better than the Beatles' original. Yeah, like I know. So yeah, Young Americans, yeah, comes in at number 11. The next one is probably the most controversial placing on my list. Just getting into the top 10 is Aladdin Sane. Yes, I hear like your gasps. I mean, yeah, like this is an album which for me, I always thought was a bit overrated. I mean, despite having a huge poster like of it like on like my wall there. I mean, yeah, I do think it's maybe a tad like overrated. I mean, there are some great tunes on here like Watch That Man, Driving Saturday, Prettiest Star, Genie. But then there's also like some more bloated moments like on here, like as well things like Panic in Detroit and Time and Lady Grinning Soul. Plus, I've never been a big fan like of like the title track, like either. So yeah, it is hit and miss this album for me, but it is still a really, really, really strong album. And yeah, will come in at number 10. Okay, next one up now at number 9 is an album which has really grown on me a lot recently. It's one I never really gave too much time to, but I do really rate this album highly now. It is The Man Who Sold the World, which, yeah, I think this is a great record. It was his first real hard rock album, this. It was a real change of direction compared to the Space Oddity album. I mean, like, he's using pretty much like the same bands, like, who would become like the Ziggy Stardust band, like, and like Spiders from Mars. And yeah, it just has a great sound to it, this record. The tracks I love on here, like The Width of a Circle is, I think, one of his best album openers, and then you've got like the title track, like All the Madmen, like Black Country Rock. It's really, yeah, it is a really strong album, this. And like, yeah, it's just like the whole sort of like sound of it is like very sort of like proto Ziggy, like sort of like he would change direction slightly like on Hunky Dory, but then sort of return to this sound like shortly after. And yeah, like even though it wasn't a commercial success at all, like upon release, this is a reissue that came out shortly after like he found like a lot of success. So yeah, Man Who Sold the World comes in at number 9. Now, if I'd done this list a few years ago, I probably would have had this album a little bit higher, but kind of thinking constructively, it has maybe gone down a little bit for me. It is the Heroes album. Now, I will still say Heroes, I think the song is probably Bowie's crowning glory. I think it is. It is my favourite Bowie song. I think it's one of the best songs of all time, and yeah, it's just an absolute masterpiece, that song. But for me, the rest of the album really just hangs on like that song. I mean, they've got a couple of like good tracks like on the first side. I also really love Sons of the Silent Age, and the opener Beauty and the Beast is quite funky as well. It's just like the instrumental stuff like isn't quite as good as the instrumental stuff on Low. Again, these are albums which always get compared to each other, but I do really like the closer as well, The Secret Life of Arabia. So yeah, it was quite difficult to sort of like find a place for this like on the list, but yeah, this is where like I have decided like to put it. So yeah, Heroes at number 8. And again, another controversial placing now. Primarily because this one like I've put so high, and it is a record which often gets ignored and overlooked, but I'm going to put number 7, Lodger, which yeah, I have always just thought of as a really underrated record. I've always had a bit of a soft spot for it. I mean, yeah, you could maybe say like Bowie and Brian Eno's collaboration had gone a little bit stale, maybe like they were getting a bit fed up like of each other like at this point, but I do think that like the songs on here like are stronger than most of the tracks like on like most of the tracks like on like the first side of Heroes. Plus you just get more off them, like, you know, like there's I love the opener, Fantastic Voyage. Move On is great as well, and Look Back in Anger again, like, is another favourite of mine. So yeah, like, there's a lot of really great songs on here, like even if it is very, very similar like in style and sound like to the Heroes album, but yeah, Lodger for me would come in at number 7. The next two for me really could be like interchangeable. Like I would always be very tempted to put these really like on like an equal like pegging, but for me, I have gone for this order today. So at number 6, I'm going to give it to Hunky Dory, which it is for me a great album, this, but slightly inconsistent. I think this goes from the sublime to the slightly average quite quickly. I mean, like the first side is great, I think, like every song on it is brilliant. Just the second side, you get a few weaker moments like Fill Your Heart, I've never really like cared too much for, and like Andy Warhol like as well, I think is a little bit annoying. But aside from that, every other song on this album is great. The singles on it were fantastic, Changes and Life on Mars, just classic Bowie, this album. So yeah, Hunky Dory comes in at number 6.
So where were the spiders?
And number 5, I have decided to give it to Ziggy Stardust here, which, yeah, again, probably a few years back, I might have had a little bit lower, because it's only really recently, like last couple of months, that I've grown to fully appreciate this album, like the whole sort of concept like around it. Plus, I just think it's a slightly more consistent album than Hunky Dory. I mean, you have got the great singles like Starman and like Suffragette City, but then you've also got great album tracks like Muno's Daydream, like which has like grown like in stature like over the years. Things like 5 Years and Soul Love, there's a lot of like really great stuff on here. So yeah, Ziggy Stardust comes in at number 5.
Ashes to ash and funk to funk. Next album, again, slightly pains me to have it solo because on any other day, I suppose this could be my favourite Bowie album. But again, thinking about it like objectively, like I have decided to put this one here at number 4, Scary Monsters. So for me, I think this is just the perfect marriage, like of his late 70s experimental work. And then sort of looking forward to like the Let's Dance album, going like in a slightly more like accessible direction. Like you can really tell like he's on the road like towards like sort of like becoming like sort of like this 80s superstar. Like me with tracks like Ashes to Ashes and Fashion being absolutely huge like singles like at the time. Plus there's a lot of great album tracks on here. I've always really loved like Up the Hill Backwards. Like he's doing a lot of like interesting things vocally like on this album, like which I do quite like on that track, as well as Teenage Wildlife, Scream Like a Baby. I love his cover of the Tom Verlaine song Kingdom Come. So yeah, there's a lot of like really great stuff on here.
for me, the reason why it is slightly pushed down like from the top is because I'm not a fan of It's No Game, which opens and closes the album, so like bookends the album. Never been a massive fan of that song, so that's probably like what like has like pushed it down like to number 4. But yeah, Scary Monsters, incredible record here. Comes at number 4. Okay, now we're into the top 3, and at number 3 I'm going to give it to Diamond Dogs, which I think is again another underappreciated album from Bowie. Everyone always tends to go to Ziggy or Aladdin Sane from his glam years, but for me I think this is just as good, if not better, than those albums. I mean, it's maybe a little short, it clocks in at about half an hour, but that's the great thing about it. It doesn't drag on. It doesn't feel like it drags on like this album, and it also it is probably what a lot of people would call a transitional album for him. Yeah, I've got glam classics like Diamond Dogs and Rebel Rebel, but then more soulful stuff like Sweet Thing Candidate and 1984 on it as well. Plus again, you have got that sort of apocalyptic concept, linking all the tracks together, I just think it is again another classic album from him. Comes in at number 3. Okay, so now at number 2, I'm going to give it to Station to Station here from 1976. And I just think this is another classic transitional album for Bowie. He was coming out of the full-on soul of Young Americans, and then sort of trying something slightly more different, kind of putting a slightly colder touch to it. I believe he was hard on drugs making this album. He says that he can't even remember writing these songs, making it, but he still managed to make an absolute sublime piece of work here. All the tracks are great on it. There are only 6 songs, but everyone is really, really, really golden. It is just a brilliant album. It doesn't feel ponderous as well. Although all the songs are quite long, around over the 5-minute mark, none of them feel like they go on for too long. It's just it is quite a unique album like that for me, because normally I'm not a massive fan of songs which go on forever, long jams and that. Whereas this one, again, there's something about it which I just really connect with. Station to Station comes in at number 2. Don't you wonder sometimes? And at number 1, I have gone for this one, which is Low, 1977, and the first stuff his Berlin trilogy. The first stuff is sort of collaborations with Brian Eno, and I suppose this album at the time was a real shock for everyone really. It is got it's not really proper songs on here. So the first side are more kind of really short, broken up fragments of songs, songs that sometimes only contain a verse, a chorus, and not much else. But it really gives it this sort of this schizophrenic sort of feeling to it. But they're all really catchy, really little nuggets of songs which I do enjoy. And then side 2 is almost the complete opposite really. It's sort of long, very relaxing music, very ambient, and quite moving as well in places. I really love, especially the last track, Subterraneans, where his saxophone comes in. It just really sounds so sublime. I suppose you do need to be in the mood to appreciate this album. It's not accessible pop music. It's not Let's Dance or Scary Monsters, this album. But what it is just a work of art, I think. So for me, Low, would come in at number 1. So that has been my ranking of some of David Bowie's albums, from 1969 through to 1989. So I hope you have enjoyed, and I would be interested to know where you would rank some of these albums, what some of your favourites are. And I will see you all next time for the next video. Goodbye.